Welcome back, everybody, to episode 8 of our series on the Knights Templar. In this episode, we're going to see the ins and outs of this great financial empire that the Knights Templar built in order to support their financial operations in the Middle East and, of course, to support their huge number of commanderies in Europe. In every Templar state, a special official known as a preceptor or steward oversaw agricultural activities. This person managed crop planting, livestock care, and the marketing of both crops and animal products. At the National Archives of England, located near London, unique collections of documents from this period provide a clear picture of the Templar commanderies' properties and the annual revenues they generated. These documents are written in Latin on rolls of sheepskin parchment. These records resemble detailed ledgers and have been preserved for centuries. The rolls capture everything: the quantities produced, the money spent, and the revenue collected by the commanderies. Each estate had a secretary who meticulously recorded daily operations. The preceptor reported the year's earnings, expenses, and harvests, including how many new animals were born, how many died, and how many were bought, sold, or transferred elsewhere. These secretaries were highly skilled writers, typically using a quill pen dipped in brown ink, crafting their entries with fine calligraphy. When one parchment was filled, they took another, and once the accounts were complete, they stitched multiple parchments together to create a massive roll. Records for the Temple Brewer commandery in Lincolnshire in eastern England offer a glimpse into this system. The land at Temple Brewer wasn't very fertile, better suited for livestock than crops. The accounts note, "We harvested 73 quarters of wheat, 3 quarters of rye, 40 quarters of barley, 46 quarters of grains, and 162 quarters of oats." The estate diversified its crops, growing wheat, barley, rye, and especially oats, which thrived on this terrain. But livestock played the starring role here. Temple Brewer was the wealthiest estate in terms of sheep, boasting about 4,500 animals. Sheep were highly profitable because English wool was a prized commodity, affordable yet very high in quality, attracting merchants, particularly from Italy. A parchment from Temple Brewer records, "We produce 3,200 fleeces of wool, weighing a total of 5,000 pounds, sold to the Bardi family, one of Italy's leading wool trading families at the time. These sales brought substantial profits to each Templar commandery." On one year's account, they show earnings of 315 pounds, 8 shillings, 8 pence, and a quarter. Across England's Templar estates, annual revenues could reach thousands of pounds, rivaling great nobles. And in some years, their wealth was immense, though rarely surpassing a king's. The Knights Templar owned vast estates across Western Europe and the Crusader states, making them among the largest landowners in the Christian world. Profits from English commanderies were sent to the Order's central hub in London at the Temple Church, where all funds were collected and accounted for. Over time, the Templars honed their financial management skills, eventually becoming bankers to kings. Their accounting records were kept with great care. The Templars were cautious investors and worked very diligently. Historians describe them as pioneers of financial systems that foreshadowed modern capitalism. While this might sound very materialistic, their ultimate mission was to defend the Holy Land. So everything they did was to serve that purpose. The Templar Order wasn't just for warriors. It welcomed people from diverse backgrounds, including those with artisanal and commercial skills, and certainly those adept with money. This allowed them to develop their estates, oversee major architectural projects, and become financial experts trusted by the monarchs of France and England to manage royal treasuries. To the Templars, the nobility, and even the royal family, the Temple Church was like a giant safe deposit box. Valuables, money, and jewels could be stored there with confidence. All profits from the order's estates flowed into this central hub. So money moved in escorted convoys, carried in wooden strongboxes from regional commanderies to financial centers. In France and England, funds traveled from commanderies to regional hubs and then to Paris, where the order's headquarters was located in the Temple Tower. The central treasury held not only money but also precious materials and relics. The Great Temple Tower in Paris served as a vault for various clients, starting with the king. Any surplus from the provinces managed by preceptors or stewards ended up in Paris, safeguarded in the Temple Tower. French kings from Philip II to Louis the Saint consistently entrusted their treasuries to the Templars throughout the 12th and 13th centuries. By the late 13th centuries, records show that beyond the king, about 60 individuals, private citizens, also deposited their wealth with the Templars for convenience, as the order managed these funds on site. A rare 13th century document, like one signed by Brother Jean de Tours, treasurer of the Paris Temple, reads, "I, Brother Jean de Tours, treasurer of the Temple in Paris, confirm that we have received and hold in deposit on behalf of the executors of a Lord's will the sum of 9,000 livres." Now, the livre was a currency used in France. Now, the equivalent of 1 livre was about 80 grams of silver. And this was a currency that was mainly used in Europe, especially in France. The sum bequeathed in the will includes 3,000 livres designated to support operations in the Holy Land. This receipt certifying a deposit equivalent to about $300,000 today hints at the immense wealth the Templars managed. While we don't know exactly how many people worked in these operations, records suggest multiple accountants were on site, alongside royal accountants managing the king's funds. The Templars employed several staff to handle the deposits and withdrawals for their clients. The ultimate goal of this economic system was to fund military efforts in the Holy Land. Resources were sent from Paris to Mediterranean ports like Marseille or Montpellier, then shipped eastward by sea. The Templars developed secure transport networks and deposit systems, creating and innovating solutions for pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. They introduced a credit note system, allowing pilgrims to deposit money at a Templar preceptory in Paris, travel to Jerusalem, and withdraw funds from a Templar house there to continue their journey. This system let pilgrims travel without carrying cash, reducing the risk of robbery and making pilgrimages safe and more accessible. With a network of fortresses across the region, the Templars could also fend off enemy attacks. The Templars hired top architects and builders, creating masterpieces of medieval military architecture. Castles like Atlit, a fortified peninsula, were virtually impregnable, even withstanding an attack during construction. Its walls are 4 to 5 meters thick, and proclaimed the Templars' power as a dominant force in the Christian world, second only to kings. Templar castles varied in purpose. Large frontier castles protected against attacks or served as bases for invasions, while others, far from borders, acted as administrative hubs for vast agricultural estates. Today, remnants of these fortresses can be found in Palestine, Israel, Lebanon, Cyprus, Jordan, Syria, and Turkey, testifying to the Templar Order's might in the Holy Land. In the 12th century, their most exposed frontier was in the north, near the Principality of Antioch and in the Amanus Mountains, modern-day Turkey-Syria border, where they built at least 6 castles. Along the pilgrim route from Jaffa to Jerusalem, the Templars constructed fortresses spaced roughly a day's walk apart. However, despite the huge sums of money accumulated in the West, the need for funds for the war in the East continues to grow. The Christian states are under constant threat of attack, and as the threats increase, the need emerges for more knights, more provisions, more weapons, and more castles to build, fortify, and protect. There are a few chronicles that report the financial empire built by the Templars. One of them is Ibn Shaddaq Chronicles, and also we have the Templar financial records from this chronicler from 1187 to 1291, Matthew Paris, a Benedictine monk that reported these findings in his Chronica Majora. The Templars founded all their fortifications with Western donations, banking, and land rents. This was their legendary wealth that ultimately led to their downfall. The cost of maintaining that number of knights in the Crusader states and their commitment even in other places was truly exorbitant. The cost of building a single Templar castle was over 1,000,000 bezants. We're talking about $200 to $375 million in today's money for a giant like Crac de Chevalier, the largest Crusader fortress with walls, towers, and barracks for over 2,000 men. Now, I mentioned 2 different types of currencies. We talk about livres, they were mostly exchanged in silver, and we have bezants. Bezants that was a currency exchanged in the Middle East and it amounted to about 4.5 grams of gold. It was a gold coin. In today's currency, with all these amounts, we're talking about billions of dollars. But in fact, building just one castle costs more than a sovereign annual revenues. A king like Richard the Lionheart brought in about 50,000 bezants a year. One castle equal to 20 to 30 years of royal income. One castle of the Templars. And here's the breakdown for a mid to large Templar castle. Labor for 1,000 plus workers run to 400,000 to 750,000 bezants. We're talking about $80 to $190 million. Materials like stone and timber shipped from Europe cost 300,000 to 600,000 bezants. And here we're talking about hundreds of millions. And transport across the Mediterranean added 150 to 300,000 bezants, and weapons, equipment, stockpiles took another 100,000 bezants, totaling over 1 million bezants. We're talking about $200 plus million of today's money. Annual maintenance for just one castle was no less staggering. A garrison of 100 to 500 knights cost 20,000 to 100,000 bezants. Provisions for men and 1,000 horses rents for tens of thousands of bezants, with constant repairs from siege damaging and totaling even more, from 35,000 to 150,000 bezants per year. The Templars owned dozens of castles in the Crusader states, 50 to 70 fortresses total, equaling to $6 to $17 billion in modern dollars just to build them and maintain them. And all of this without even mentioning the ports to maintain, the pilgrimage roads, the troops, the properties, and all the other things central to their finances. We are actually in front of an equivalent of the military-industrial complex of our modern times. Templars funds grand total per year easily equal 1 to 2 million bezants, rivaling billions of dollars in today's money. And these operations are essential in order to maintain the different commanderies throughout Europe, to generate more revenue into their different financial enterprises in order to fund the Crusader states and to guarantee the safety of the pilgrims along the way in the Holy Land, and also to fund these huge castles and commanderies to keep on fighting the Crusader wars, the Crusades in the Middle East. As you can see, the maintenance and the construction of new castles in the Holy Land wasn't cheap. These fortresses amounted to hundreds of millions of dollars in modern currency. And you can see the reason why there was this unified effort from the Pope, so the Church, and the nobles, the monarchies in Europe, to support this fight in the Holy Land in order to reclaim those territories and make sure that they did not fall in the hands of Muslim armies. Well, this is going to be it for today. Thank you very much for following up, and I will see you next time to episode 9. Thank you and have a good one. Bye.